Hey, music fans. Welcome back. We got another Genesis review with Duke. This is kind of the one where Phil Collins kind of starts finding his voice and becomes more prevalent. And they start going in a little bit of a more commercial direction with this album, but it's still fantastic. I love this record. It's one of my favorite Genesis albums. And Jacob Martin is here to review it with me this evening.
What's up, everyone? I'm doing pretty good. It's always good to be on your channel to talk some Genesis, and I must say I enjoyed this album as well.
All right. Well, so we had, and then there were 3 last time, which I know you really liked that album. I'm really excited about this one. Here's the record. And on the inside.
What is that on the back cover?
Oh, it's the color photo with the picture of Duke cut out. See how you got the picture of Duke in the window and everything is white. You got the back and everything but Duke in the window is color, but Duke in the window are white.
Ah, gotcha.
So yeah, you open up the gatefold and there's all the pictures of the songs, stories that they tell, and you got the lyrics. So, oh, Nick's here. He's not going to be on the video that much. He's watching the debate. Okay. Phil Collins, at the time of this album, was going through a divorce, and so he asked if he could take some time off to try to fix his divorce, and sadly it didn't work out. So you can kind of hear a lot of songs about loneliness and rejection on this album. Man, sad the divorce happened, but like it makes for some really good music. The band went into the studio and originally devised this album to be 2 sides, kind of like Foxtrot. The first side was going to have 6 songs, 2 written by each member of the band, 2 by Tony Banks, 2 by Phil Collins, and 2 by Mike Rutherford. And then the second side was going to be called the Duke Suite, which was going to kind of be like Supper's Ready, which was a long multi-movement song. They decided that in order to not have comparisons with Supper's Ready, that they would split the Duke Suite up into its own songs and shuffle the tracks around. I'll tell you which songs make up the Duke Suite whenever we talk about them. But they ended up kind of mixing it around because they didn't want to live in the past and wanted to keep on breaking new territories and not do something they felt like they'd done before. Each of the members, even though each of the members has 2 songs on the album, each of the members actually wrote 3 songs for this album. Mike Rutherford wrote a song called Open Door, which was a B-side, which is a song we're going to talk about as a bonus track. Tony Banks wrote a song called Evidence of Autumn, which is a B-side as well, which we'll talk about as a bonus track. And Phil Collins' 3rd song was called In the Air Tonight, which you've probably heard of that song.
Oh, yeah.
Which would ultimately end up on his solo debut album, Face Value, as the opening track. But do you have any kind of brief thoughts about Duke here before we go into the track by track?
Oh, yeah. I do think this is another fantastic album from Genesis. You know what? After listening to this album a second time, I can't decide which one I like more. It's either this or And Then There Were 3. I think they're neck and neck. There's some songs on each album that are some very high highs, but still, another really good Genesis album. This one, you could tell Genesis is in the 80s. It's definitely more mainstream in comparison to their past albums, but it's starting to sound like the Genesis I was most familiar with, and they still had some good stuff during this time.
What I like about this album is it's really a perfect blend of progressive rock and pop music at the same time. Like, you got stuff like Misunderstanding, but at the same time you got stuff like Heat Haze or Duke's Travels and Duke's End. Some stuff that even hints at what Phil Collins is going to do in his solo material as well. I don't know, that's kind of why I like this album, is it's really got music that sounds like all kinds of different things on this album. And that's what I like about it. But at the same time, each of the songs kind of has lyrical themes that tie them all together, and it makes for a really good listening experience. So let's go ahead and dig in with track number 1, which is Behind the Lines.
All right, so right off the bat, great start. There's this really cool instrumental intro featuring some great keyboard and even some synthesizers from Tony Banks. Phil Collins drumming his heart out. Pretty fun little jam session for half the song. And then Phil Collins starts singing, and it's another great epic album opener. Didn't make my top 5, but I thought this was a really cool way to start the album. I know you told me when I think we were listening to the album privately the other night, and you had mentioned that this was like the beginning of that little Duke suite. If you were sharing the story behind that, I'll say that when you share your thoughts. But I thought the loose connections of some of these songs I felt like were kind of interesting, but it's not done in a way to where it's like if you didn't know it, it doesn't come off as jarring. Like you can enjoy these as standalone tracks. I think that's what I like about the album. But I thought this was a pretty good start to the album. This is probably one of the more up-tempo tracks on the album, and yeah, I really enjoyed it.
You know, talking about that makes me realize why this is such a great album. You can get as much of this album and like you can get as much as you want out of this album as you want. If you're just a casual listener and like you're like, oh yeah, I like Misunderstanding, I want to hear some more stuff by this band, you'll be like, oh yeah, there's some other good stuff on this album. If you're a musician and you like the drumming, you can get like Phil Collins' drumming or Tony Banks' synthesizer playing. If you're a diehard and you like the whole Duke suite, you're like, they should have had the Duke suite be its own thing, or it's like you're putting the pieces together in your head of how it gets fit together. That's great too. You can just really get however much you want out of this album. But Behind the Lines is a fantastic way to open up this album. I kind of consider this to be the overture to the album, at least the first half of this song, with the instrumental section, which features some of the themes that we're going to be hearing on this album. I know I can definitely hear a little bit of what is it? I know there's a few songs that I hear a little bit of "Turn It On Again" in the keyboards at the beginning where it goes do 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 do, like kind of like that part, hinting at some of the songs that you're going to hear. And Phil Collins drumming on this track, really the whole album. This song, like he just comes in guns a-blazing with his drums. And then when he finally starts singing, it's like you hear a much more confident Phil on this album. Not that he was bad; he's always been a great singer. But it's like something about, I guess it might have been that divorce. Going through that divorce might have just helped him to find his singing voice. But he sings so well. This is the first part of the Duke suite. It's where our main character falls in love with this girl who we're going to call Duchess, and it looks like she likes him at first, but then she changes somehow, and it turns out she doesn't really like him, and he finds out that. Some really good lyrics in here. I'm going to point out just a few of my favorite lines. Go to the lyrics in here, but it's like, it's hotter than I've known before, but I feel so cold and I don't know why. But if the fire within your heart can beat the storm, then I really believe that you can make it right. The time has come now, we must show our feelings, but I'm looking right through you and your heart is empty. Whatever happened to you, it's too late to change now. There's nowhere you can run to, no place to hide, and you let me down. And then it gets to the best part. Oh, wait a minute, I don't understand. It's getting stronger. Oh, grab my hand. I just like this whole song. It's so good. Phil's vocals. Mike Rutherford's guitar is actually really good on here. I know people are probably missing Steve Hackett by this point, but Mike does a really good job on the guitar as well. And it's just a fantastic way to open the album and set the tone. So now we're going to go to our second track, which is Duchess.
First off, I love the transitional stuff between Behind the Lines and Duchess. It blends very seamlessly. The other thing I think is cool about this song is, much like Behind the Lines, there's this really cool little extended intro that has something that I'm sure your alter ego, the Genius, would heavily complain about. The drum machine, prominent instrument in the 1980s and a lot of 80s acts, especially the synth pop era. I thought it was used in a really cool way to set the tone and mood for this song. Between that and Tony Banks' keyboard, I love the extended intro of that. And then once Phil actually uses his regular old drum and starts drumming, and he sings the story about the Duchess character. And I think if this is a continuation of the last song, I guess Duchess ditched the Duke character just to be a singer, and that's a jerk thing to do. But yet, Phil is singing about how much she loves singing, and she's doing her heart out. She's singing her heart out, and she's passionate about what she loves. She's not doing it for money or fame. She just loves what she's doing. So it's like, are we actually rooting for this character because she's pursuing uh, the passion that she loves doing as an artist? But if it connects with the last song, she's doing it. She's giving up a good relationship for selfish. It's weird because the artistic side's not selfish, but the personal relationship drive is selfish, which is makes this a pretty complex song if you dive deep into the lyrics.
Oh, it gets even more complex when you get to turn it on again.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I think this is a really cool song. This one actually did make my top 5. I think it's a really great ballad with some really cool drumming in it. Even the drum machine.
So this is the very first song to ever use a drum machine. The first one.
Oh, not just the first Genesis song, like
no,
the
it's
first song, period?
Yeah, the very first recorded song to use a drum machine. It's Duchess by Genesis. And it's used to very good effect. Phil Collins always knows when to use the drum machine and when to use the real drums. I don't think he ever really uses the drum machine to replace his drums. He just uses it to augment his drum sound, which is what he's doing in this song. Really cool drum pattern that he has set up there. But then he comes in with his real drums. And man, he is singing his heart out on this song. The Duchess character leaves Duke to become a singer. And like Duke apparently like is her manager to start out with, but then she dumps him. And we're going to get to the whole why she dumps him in the next song, Guide Vocal, which is their breakup song. But man, very emotional. It starts out where the Duchess is like just starting out, and then she gets on stage and everyone cries for more. But then like there comes a time when she gets on stage and nobody cries for more, and it's like she's a has-been. But wow, this song is amazing as well. Okay, now we're going to get to track number 3, which is Guide Vocal.
All right, so this is the shortest song on the album. It's only like a minute and a half. I kind of feel like this is just a transitional song. It's not, I would say technically this is my least favorite song on the album, just because of the way it's structured on the album. Now, I think it works as a good little epilogue for the previous 2 songs since they're connected. But listening to it on its own, I don't think it has the same impact. But I do like the fact that the lyrics of this song is later reused to a song that we'll get to near the end of our review. And I'm excited to dive into that song. So I can see the purpose for why the song's there, especially if this was originally part of that Duke suite. But as a standalone track, it's probably the weakest song on the album.
I would probably agree with that, but it's still really cool. I like it's pretty much just Phil Collins singing and Tony Banks playing the Yamaha CP electric piano underneath, but it's really powerful. It's kind of continuing the story of how Duke is upset that Duchess is leaving whenever he feels like he's the one who brought her fame. Later on, we'll find out that both of them really aren't the best characters, so it's not just the Duchess just running off. Duke has his own problems, even though you feel kind of sorry for him because he's really lonely. But then the Duchess sings the last verse, which the very last line of this song is very haunting. Take what's yours and be damned. It's like, wow, that's rough. But I love Phil's vocal on this one, especially since it's called Guide Vocal, which it's kind of a play on words. Guide vocal is a term used whenever you sing over a track that's like just a placeholder. And you're planning on going back and re-recording the vocals, but the song, like guide vocal, actually means that he's the one he feels like who guided her to stardom, and he's singing this song. So play on words. But we're gonna jump on ahead. Oh, Nick is back. Welcome back, Nick.
All right, welcome back.
What's with artists making their best music when they go through bad stuff? Yep, Phil's divorce leading to some of these breakup songs. But we're going to put the Duke Suite on hold for a bit and go to some of our solo songs. We have Man of Our Times, written by Mike Rutherford.
All right, so I think when I first listened to this album, this was my second to least favorite song on the album. I don't know why I thought that, because now when I listen to it the second time, I thought this was a really awesome song. Didn't make my top 5. It's a really strong honorable mention. Phil Collins' drumming on this song is absolutely epic.
Yeah.
There's this one part, he does some like triplet drumming. It's like every time it does that, it sounds like a machine gun's about to go off. It's like, this is angry Phil Collins. And it's I guess it's the way he's reflecting the pain through his drumming, I guess. Also, his vocal delivery, especially on the chorus, was like, all the time. I'm like, all right. This is like, part of this song production-wise kind of reminds me of, you mentioned some of the songs sound like some of Phil Collins' solo stuff. Now you mentioned it, maybe this was the precursor to Take Me Home a little bit, maybe.
Maybe. I mean, it was written by Mike, but like, we're getting to a point in the band where all three of them just add their own flavor to each other's songs. So much so that when we get to the self-titled album, they stopped even handing out writing credits and just say that everything is written by Genesis because of how much of a team they were.
Oh, nice. You gotta love it when the band works together.
Yeah, they're really starting to become, the three of them are just starting to really just figure out how to just lock into each other, just like lock into the groove with each other, learn how to play with each other. And some of the songs are even based on improvisations that they did in the studio rather than music ideas that they came up with before.
Yeah, but this is a great song. It's one that's grown on me.
I love the drums on Man of Our Times. I love the drum intro, the doo 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 boo doo 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 boo doo doo doo. I have no idea what the lyrics to this song mean, but Phil sounds pissed when he's singing them, and that's reflected in his drumming as well. I like some of the weird vocals things that effects they put on his vocals, especially like when he says like "me into me and you into you." And it's like, what are they doing to his voice? And then he goes tonight, tonight. Tonight. So you got the chorus, which is very menacing sounding, or no, the verse. The verse is very menacing sounding, but then the chorus is more uplifting sounding when you get to the "He's a man of our times." Oh, and then you get right back into that menacing drumming. It's super cool. I really like this song. So now we're going to get to the first song that was written by Phil Collins for this album, and that is "Misunderstanding."
And this was the big hit from the album. So this is one I've heard before. Big radio hit. I've heard it on the radio quite a few times. Amazing track. I love it. It's got a really good guitar riff. And it's got a very singable chorus. Must be some misunderstanding. And I like the backing vocals. Woo! Must be some kind of mistake. What's kind of neat, you got this like epic production going on, and then like dissecting the lyrics and realizing this is the Phil Collins divorce album, essentially. It's kind of a sad song about this hopeful guy trying to go on a date, but then like the girl stands him up, and he thinks it was all misunderstanding. And I'm like, Oh man, Phil, what's going on? What's happening? Like you were experiencing so much rough stuff on this album, and I feel bad for you. But this is an amazing song. This one is definitely in my top 5.
Okay, so this is the big hit single. This is the one that made people say Genesis are selling out. I don't think that. This is still great. I mean, yes, it's commercial, but like, if you watch Phil Collins in interviews around this time, he says he never wanted to do it just for the money. He wanted to make songs that people connected with, and he said he was tired of writing songs about fairies and fantasy, like Peter Gabriel was doing, because A, Peter Gabriel had already done that, and B, like, he felt that it wasn't very human. He wanted to write songs with more human emotion. So he wrote this song because he was going through a breakup at the time, a divorce, and he thought that people would be able to empathize with that. So what's interesting about this song is there's two things I find really interesting about this song. One is that there's kind of an inverted song structure. Usually you have the verse comes first and then the chorus. But in this song, the chorus comes first, and the chorus is the main part, and then you get the verse, but the verse is almost like a bridge instead of a verse. And then you get back to the chorus. And the second thing is that the verse or the bridge, whatever you want to call it, is in a different key than the chorus is. There's this really nifty modulation that happens whenever they get to the verse section. So you got the chorus section that there must be some misunderstanding, with that cool guitar riff, and then Tony Banks is kind of keeping the rhythm with the piano, kind of doing that swing thing with the piano. And then you have this really cool key change, which it goes into a really unexpected key for the verses, and it starts out where Phil's character in this song is just like, I've been waiting for this weekend. You know, he's got his date all planned out. We're going to see a show. I never dreamed that I'd have this feeling. It's like, I can't believe that I'm actually going to go on a date now with you. This is amazing. But it's like, but seeing you is believing. So it's like, I'm excited about the date, but I'm kind of also like dubious because I'm going to wait until I see you. And it's like, no, I don't know why you didn't show up. It's like, uh-oh, now I'm being stood up. Or maybe you're just late, is what he's thinking. And then it goes back to the chorus. There must be some misunderstanding. And then when it gets to the second verse, he runs around trying to find her. He goes to the places that they always go. And then here's the real kicker. He goes to her house, knocks on the door, doesn't get an answer, looks in on the back, and she's on a date with another guy. He was just leaving. It's like, oh, no, Phil, no. Oh, that's awful. You got stood up and she's with another guy. Like, man, that's savage. Like, come on, Phil. I mean, it's not your fault, but it's like, wow, that's awful. But then it gets back to the chorus again. There must be some misunderstanding. And then at the end, you get a little more guitar at the end from Mike Rutherford playing around with that down. And then there's like a there must be some kind of mistake. And then Phil goes up into his falsetto voice. There must be a misunderstanding. So really good single. This is kind of the song they needed to help get their attention with the public. I know some people kind of accuse this of let's just capitalize on Follow You, Follow Me, but not as good. No, I disagree. I like this better than Follow You, Follow Me. This song is amazing. Now we're going to get to our final song on side 1, which is I think our first Tony Banks written song called Heat Haze.
I think this is a pretty good ballad. This is one where I don't think this one stands out to me compared to the other songs on the album. Like, it's pretty good for what it is, but compared to the other songs on the album, it's not one I'm going to go back to as much, but it's not bad. I don't have much to say on this one.
I'm going to have a lot more to say on this one. But first, Nick says, you know it's serious when you get Phil Collins mad. Okay, Heat Haze. man, you got this cool electric piano intro, and then Phil Collins is singing vocally in his Trick of the Tail vocal style for the verses. And you got that with the electric piano played by Tony Banks. And the chords, oh my goodness, such a weird harmony for this song. Like some of his chord choices that he chooses in this song are just so odd, but so cool at the same time. I kind of just wonder. And then you get to this pre-chorus section that's led in by Mike Rutherford's bass. There's like a slide in, and then you get this cool little synthesizer interlude. It goes like, I probably can't hear that because it's high pitched and my microphone will pick it up. But you got this cool synthesizer interlude that just builds up, and then you get to that hard hitting chorus where Phil Collins switches from his Trick of the Tail voice to his Duke voice, and everyone knows his Duke voice because that's the voice he uses on In the Air Tonight. That's the voice he's going to be known for, and he just hits real strong. The trees and I are shaken, but the trees and I are shaken by the same wind, but whereas the trees will lose their withered leaves, but I just can't seem to let them loose. It's like kind of abstract lyrics, but then I know Tony Banks wrote this, but I kind of apply this to Phil Collins' divorce. And I'm going to go a little bit into why I think this song is about Phil Collins' divorce, or at least why Phil adapted the lyrics to go to his divorce, because he's singing this with his whole heart. So we have some very atmospheric lyrics at the beginning about a sleepy calm and the gentle earth and the tree with the leaves, and it's a silent day. And then we get the line, "It's time to stop this dreaming, and must we rejoin the real world, as revealed by orange lights and a smoky atmosphere." So I think that kind of represents whenever he was in his marriage, kind of Twitter-pated, if you've seen the movie Bambi, where everything is all fantasy-like, everything is happy. And then now, sadly, we have to stop the dreaming and come back to the real world. And then we get the chorus. "The trees and I are shaken with the same wind, but whereas the trees will lose their withered leaves, but I just can't seem to let them loose." So it's like when the hot winds come and blow the leaves off the trees, the leaves just lets all the leaves go. But I guess Phil is likening his feelings for his first wife like the leaves. The troubled wind is blowing the leaves away, but he can't let them go. Like he doesn't want to let them go. Like he doesn't want to let his wife go. He doesn't want to let his feelings go for his first wife. "They can't refresh me, these hot winds of the south. I feel like an alien, a stranger in a strange place." So he almost feels like he doesn't know where to go, caught between the fantasy of the first wife he had and between the sadness that he's going to have to face now that he's getting a divorce. I mean, this is all just my interpretation of the song, but this is one of my favorite songs on the album, so I want to go deep into it. "Now the light is fading fast. Chances slip away. A time will come to pass when there will be none. Then addicted to a perfume poison, betrayed by its aftertaste." So that's the line I really think is describing his divorce. Betrayed by a perfume poison, or addicted to a perfume poison, betrayed by its aftertaste. So I feel like he still has feelings for his first wife, but yet he also feels betrayed by her at the same time. "We shall lose the wonder and find nothing in return. Many are the substitutes, but they're powerless on their own." And then we get that cool synthesizer thing again. And then the chorus comes in. "Beware the fisherman who's casting out his line into a dried up riverbed, but don't tell him because he won't believe you." So it's like, who is the fisherman? Like, you're supposed to look out for the fisherman who's casting out his river line into a dried up bed. You can also kind of feel like Phil is maybe the fisherman throwing his line in the river, but the river is dried up. They say there's a whole lot of fish in the sea, but it's like, how am I going to find somebody else if the riverbed's all dried up right now? Also, it's funny because I heard that some people misheard this lyric as "Beware the Slipper Man," which they thought was a reference to Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, which that would have been funny if they would have actually done that. But it's fisherman. I kind of wish they would have put "Beware the Slipper Man," but "Throw some bread to the ducks instead. It's easier that way," which is basically Phil having to realize that he might have to just grow old alone and be caught by himself alone at the park throwing bread to the ducks because he doesn't have anyone to live with. That's intense. And once again, I feel like an alien, a stranger in a strange place. And then it repeats the trees and I are shaking verse. But I went way too deep into those lyrics. But man, I love this song. I really feel that Phil is just kind of interpreting that towards his divorce. That's what I have to say about that song. I spent way too much time talking about it, but man, I love this song.
I feel like I did that song an injustice because I'm like, the song just okay to me, and you're like, oh, this is a great song, and you dissecting the lyrics. I'm like, I feel kind of stupid for not picking up on that.
Now the lyrics are hard to understand. They're kind of fantastical, and I might be putting meaning to them that you don't have, but that's just kind of what it means to me, especially putting it in the context of Phil going through a divorce.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's still a well crafted song. It just didn't stand out to me compared to the rest of the album.
I mean, when I first heard the song, I liked it, but just because of that cool little synthesizer thing that happens before the chorus.
Yeah.
Okay, we are going to flip the record over to side 2, and we're going to get Turn It On Again, the other single from this album, and the return of the Duke Suite.
Oh, I don't know why I was going to mute myself there. It's my turn. So, yeah, I wasn't as familiar with this one as Misunderstanding. I think I heard the song once. I think you introduced it to me one time. And listening to this song, it's like, wow, this song is amazing. This one is probably the most memorable song on the whole album. It's got some great drumming on it, some good synthesizers on it. It's probably, if people say this is when Genesis went pop, I would say this is probably the one people are probably thinking of, because I'm surprised this wasn't a bigger hit than it actually was, because you don't hear this song that much on the radio compared to Misunderstanding. But I think I'm going to say this is better than Misunderstanding, if I'm being honest. This one there's a great rhythm to it. It's got some interesting lyrics. I'm not 100% sure how it ties onto the Duke Suite. I think the song's primarily about, to be honest, I don't think I'm 100% sure what this song's primarily about. I think it's music and how it ties into relationships. I think that's what I think the song is about from the 2 times I've listened to this song. But it's pretty cool. It's a really cool track. I love the production on it, the outright catchiness of it. I would say, if I had to say what was the greatest discovery, I take that back. There's one other song on this album I'm going to say is the greatest discovery, because I heard this song before the album, but still a really great song. I love it.
Okay, so I'm going to do the reverse of what I did with the last song. I'm going to do the meaning behind the song first, and then my thoughts on the music. Okay, how this fits into the Duke Suite. This is the part of the story where Duke gets so lonely because he's away from Duchess and she doesn't love him anymore, that he just has to be alone and watch TV and listen to the radio all the time. And eventually he gets so lonely that he falls in love with women on the TV. And then he turns the channel and Duchess is on the TV. And he's like, oh, there's Duchess. Now I just want to be with Duchess again. And falls in love with her again, but only through the TV. So that's what happens in this song. He's basically alone just watching TV, and he becomes a loner. It's like, he's so alone, he's just sitting there watching TV and listening to the radio, and he keeps seeing Duchess everywhere on the TV and hearing her on the radio. Musically, this is everything I want from Genesis. This is really what I want from Genesis, is this song right here, because it sounds like a simple little pop song, but then whenever you look into the theory behind it and stuff, this song is super complicated. Like, the main section is in 13/8. I can't think of any other song that's in 13/8, much less a top 40 hit like "Turn It On Again." And it also changes time signatures. It doesn't just stay that way. It changes all the time. It's got a really cool guitar riff, but and then that driving at the beginning. Phil Collins is playing a surprisingly simple drum groove behind this crazy time signature, which I think really what makes the song is Phil's drumming on here, kind of tying everything together. His drum performance is amazing. His vocal performance is amazing. I like the I Can Show You section. And much like Don't Stop Believing, the chorus to the song doesn't come in till the very end. Turn it on. Turn it on, turn it on again. Turn it on. Turn it on, turn it on again. And then there's like a little counter melody in the background. I can see another face. I can see another face. It works really well together. This song, this probably I made a Genesis ranking list earlier, and spoiler alert. Let's see, I'm not going to say where I put it, but let me just say, "Turn It On Again" made my top 5 Genesis songs. So that's how much I like it.
Oh wow. Yeah, it's a great song, great choice to be in the top 5. It's pretty cool about the time signature changes. I did read, I think some of the Genesis members were talking about how they've seen videos of people trying to dance to this song and they always slip up because of the time signatures.
Yes, I know that some of them were like, "Oh, this song should be easy to play," and they were like, "Oh, you do know this is in 13, right?" And there was one reunion show in 1982 where it was a fundraiser where Peter Gabriel came back for one show, and this is the only song that Phil got to sing lead vocals on, was "Turn It On Again." And Peter Gabriel went back and did the drums, and Peter Gabriel said that he couldn't play the drums very well because he didn't realize how complicated the song was.
Wow.
And thankfully Chester Thompson was drumming as well, so he could cover for that, but great song. Okay, now we are going to get to our second song, and this is the other song written by Mike Rutherford. It's "Alone Again."
Alone Again. Or do you mean Alone Tonight?
I think it's "Alone."
I was Alone Tonight.
Oh, "Alone Tonight." Yeah, alone.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, "Alone Tonight." I guess I don't look at the names of these songs. I just listen to the album. That's my bad. "Alone Tonight."
But yeah, this is an amazing ballad. This is another one where you can tell that Phil Collins is just singing from experience about loneliness, probably post-divorce. This is one. The sad thing is this album is so good that this is near the bottom of my ranking. It's still a really epic song. Like, even though the song's in my bottom 3, I still think it's a great song. That just tells you how great this album actually is.
Okay, this song, when you're alone, like if you've been through a breakup, or if you're just feeling lonely, this song will tear you apart. It really will. Man, Phil is just singing from experience. Just gonna wrench your gut with this song. Starting out with just lonely lyrics about how he's a lonely man and he keeps trying to change, trying to find someone, but it never works out for him. And then there's a key change and things seem good for just a second. I want to read the words that go along with it. He says, "When the morning comes and the sun is out, it warms me up again. What a funny world it is for me, and all I'll ever be. It's not enough, this feeling and feeling inside." Yeah, then it switches. It goes back into the more sad sounding part of the song. It switches, and Tony Banks has this sweet sounding synthesizer, and then it's like, "But all I'll ever be," and it switches back to that minor chord. It's like, oh no, there was a bit of hope, but then nope. And then he just keeps repeating the "I'm alone again tonight." And here's where you get that cool Phil Collins signature drum sound that you're going to hear later on his solo albums, kind of like "In the Air Tonight" with those big toms with the reverb on them. But yeah, another great song, but it's not going to be in my top 5. All right. Oh, I'm excited about this one. This is "Cul-de-sac." It's the next song written by Tony Banks.
Again, another great song on the album. This one's got, to me, the big highlight on this song is the drumming. That's like the big MVP of the song. Lyrically, I think there's stronger songs on the album. I think this is another song about loneliness, kind of like the last song. But I still really enjoyed this song, and a lot of that is because of Phil Collins. He's like the MVP on this album, especially between this album and then there were three. These are the albums where Phil showed he was a force to be reckoned with as far as drumming is concerned.
Okay, so it starts out with just the electric piano when he says like, "Wake up now, this is the time you waited for," and you get this do 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 do, and then all of a sudden these walls of synthesizers start hitting you, and then you get the bow bow. I love that. I love that part. Um, Lyrically, this is the only song on the album that's not about loneliness or rejection. It's about an army who was forced to surrender.
I messed
So
that up.
No, I've done a lot of research on the lyrics of this album, so I used to think it was about that too, but then I was like, oh no, it's not. So I'm like, this doesn't really fit with the rest of the album. So I kind of think maybe Evidence of Autumn would have fit lyrically better in the theme of this album, but we'll get to that song later. But then whenever it comes in and Phil Collins starts drumming, it's like, ooh, the drums are almost like gunshots on this. And then whenever it gets to that climax, right after that, and it gets to the like the intense part where it's like, "But did something escape? No, not even one." Bow down. That's the climax of the song. I love that part. And then it just kind of like keeps going until it slows down, and you get just like some cool electric piano chords at the end. Really cool song. Not in my top 5, but man, still amazing. Now we're going to get to our final song written by Phil Collins, which is Please Don't Ask.
All right. Now, this is another one that grew on me when I listened to it the second time. This one is, I'm going to say this is the saddest song on the album because this one feels like it's like directly related to Phil's divorce. I think it makes it all the more sadder. This one is definitely the most personal. There's some really good piano on it. Song lyrics that reflect the heartbreak and grief that comes from such an awful event, especially the separation between the spouse, and he makes a reference to his son. I assume he had a son at the time of this album's release. I don't know Phil's personal life that well, but yeah, that really sucks when you hear stuff like that happening. This one, you talk about, this is probably the biggest song that I think imitates real life as far as Phil Collins goes. And, you know, I respect the heck out of this song. This one's in my top 5.
So the opening line of this song is, "Please don't ask me how I feel fine." But you know Phil's not fine, especially whenever you dive deeper into the song. It's like, that's just that first line that's just so powerful. It's directly related to Phil's divorce. It's definitely the most personal song on this album. A lot of people say that he should have saved this song for face value. I kind of disagree. I feel like it really just elevates the theme of this album about loneliness and rejection. I love the piano opening, and then you get just some really just sad lyrics here about how Phil is like, he's separated from his wife, but then he runs into his ex-wife and she asks him how he's doing, and this is his response. He's like, "Oh, I see you've lost some weight. I guess your hair looks nice." But then he says, like, "I remember when it was easy to say that I love you, but things have changed since then, and I'm not sure if I still do." I'm like, oh no, that's like, man. And then he says, I miss my boy. It's like he's got separated from his son too, and he hopes his son is doing well. I hopes the kids are well. And he says, "You're a mother to the world," which apparently means he thinks that she'll still be a good mother to his son. But he's just like, "Leave me alone. I'm doing fine. I'm trying to put on serious face, but then like deep inside, he's not doing okay. He misses her, even though he's not sure if he still loves her. He misses his son. And I love the way that the song ends with more of a happy sounding chord, even though it's a sad song. And I love how, like, right after the song ends, we just go into Duke's Travels. It's just like, this is the last song. Like, I know that there's some singing in Duke's Travels, so there's a reprise of guide vocal, but this is the last, like, song with words proper on this album, and it's just a great way to end the songs before we get to the epic Duke's Travels and Duke's End. Like, mostly instrumental. There's the reprise of guide vocal, but man, love this song. It's in my top 5 as well. So let's get into Duke's Travels and Duke's End.
All right, I'm glad you decided to combine these two together because it's pretty much one extended track. So historically, I've not been the biggest instrumental guy. There's some cool instrumentation on some of these tracks, but 9 times out of 10, they're usually my least favorite song on the album. There was one exception when we did Wind and Wuthering. I really loved Watt Gorilla. I think that was in my top 5 when we did Wind and Wuthering. And I'm going to say it. This is a top 5. This song is amazing.
What about Los Endos? What about Los Endos?
Oh, Los Endos was good too. I think that was my least favorite song on Trick of the Tail. But that's a pretty good instrumental as well. But yeah, this one was really amazing. I love the slow build up. And then Phil Collins starts drumming. And the way he drums on this song reminds me strangely of the Tarzan soundtrack. What's kind of funny is earlier today I heard Two Worlds from Tarzan. And like the way he drums on Two Worlds is very similar to how he drums on this song. I don't think that's a coincidence because he's such a good drummer. Then there's some really cool additional instruments besides the the keyboard and the guitars and stuff. It almost sounds like Irish folk music almost. I might be off on that. And that could just be on the keyboard too because of some of the technology at the time, but it's a really cool instrumental. Like Mike Rutherford, Tony Banks, Phil Collins all have moments to shine on this song. And then you think it's just an instrumental until you get to the end of Duke's Travels where Phil Collins repeats the vocals on the guide vocal track. And honestly, I think the lyrics work better on this song as kind of like a ominous closer on the album and kind of the themes of it. And then there's like these weird little chimes at the end of Duke's Travels, and then you get a short pause. And then back to Duke's End, then we get some epic playing once again. This is another awesome track on the album. Epic way to close out the entire Duke album, and like I said, it's in my top 5.
This is such a cool way to close the album. This is my favorite of the Genesis instrumentals. Probably my favorite Genesis album closer. We start out with just like that synthesizer, and then you get into those drums, and then it just goes into madness, especially that part that's like, and then like the drumming keeps going really strong. Mike Rutherford has a cool guitar solo on here. This is the end of the Duke suite, and I don't know what's going on in the story, but I have my own interpretation. I feel like Duke's Travels is Duke attempting to reconnect with Duchess and him trying to face his feelings, preparing to go talk to her again. And then Duke's End, like whenever you get the reprise, I'll talk more about the music behind it later, but you get a reprise of some of the songs. I feel like the end of Duke's End leaves it open-ended, that the very end is him whenever he reaches her and he's just about to talk to her again, and it leaves it open-ended for you to decide what happens. That's how I think the album ends. I don't know what's going on because it's just an instrumental, and I think the guide vocal reprise is kind of him remembering their last words before he left, and then he's going to talk to her again. That's my interpretation. I don't know what you think. I don't even know what Phil Collins or Tony Banks or Mike Rutherford thinks, but that's what I think. But you get that epic guide vocal reprise, which is like, oh, and it's like they're changing the harmonic structure of guide vocals. Some of the chords used are different than are used in guide vocal, and it just gets more epic every time he gets to the next line of the song. And then right after that, it all just cuts out. And you get like a boom, 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 and then you get Duke's End, which is essentially a reprise of Behind the Lines, the opening instrumental section. More of that machine gun drumming from Phil Collins. And then you get a little instrumental reprise of "Turn It On Again" right before the end, and I love the end. The end is like do 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 do, and there's like a reprise of "Behind the Lines" in there somewhere with just the piano where it's like do 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 do. Such a great way to end this album. Such an epic closer. It's amazing.
Yeah, very amazing.
Okay, so now we are going to get to our top 5 songs on this album.
Top 5. All right. I have 4 honorable mentions: "Alone Tonight," "Cul-de-sac," "Behind the Lines," and "Man of Our Times" would have been number 6. Number 5, "Please Don't Ask." Number 4, "Duchess." Number 3, I'm combining Duke's Travels and Duke's End. Number 2, "Misunderstanding," and number 1, "Turn It On Again."
Okay, so I got number 5, or strong honorable mention to Duke's Travels and Duke's End. Number 5 is "Misunderstanding." Number 4 is what did I had my list pulled up. 5 is "Misunderstanding." 4 is "Behind the Lines." Number 3 is "Please Don't Ask." Number 2, I said it was my favorite, but I switched. Number 2 is "Heat Haze," and number 1 is "Turn It On Again."
All right.
Yeah, "Turn It On Again." That was my favorite song when I first heard this album. I changed it again. It's really just everything I'm looking for in a Genesis song, just having the perfect blend of progressive rock and pop music. So what would you rank this album, or would you rate it out of 1 to 10?
1 to 10. I'm gonna give it a 9, much like and then there were 3. I can't decide which album I like better. I think both have some really high moments. Like this album has, "Turn It On Again," "Misunderstanding," that epic instrumental, and then there were 3 has probably my pick for the most underrated Genesis song aside from "Ripple," "Scenes from a Night's Dream." I still love that song. It's such an earworm. And "Follow You, Follow Me." That both of those Genesis albums are amazing. They're both good in their own way, and this one I think proves that Genesis can still do good mainstream stuff. Where they still have some rocking songs, but they can also do more poppier Billboard Hot 100 chart success and still create an epic song out of it.
I'm going to give this a 10.
I figured.
I love this album. It's one of my favorite Genesis albums. Yes, it's more commercial, but you can still tell this is very much art. It's not them just trying to make music just for the masses. Like, there's still a lot of artful intent with this record, the whole story behind some of the songs, and Phil Collins going through the divorce. Now, I'm excited for us to talk about the next album, Abacab, because that album is kind of the black sheep of their discography. People either love it or they hate it. There's not really in between. And it's kind of maligned, which I don't get because I love Abacab. It's very experimental, very bold, kind of new wavy. I'm excited to get to hear what you think about that one.
Yeah, for sure. there's not been a bad Genesis album so far. The weakest is easily From Genesis to Revelation. That's only because that one didn't feel like Genesis. That just felt like they were doing something that wasn't them.
Yeah. Once we got to Trespass, though, there hadn't been any bad albums. All right. Well, thank you guys for watching our review on Duke. We will see you next time whenever we review Abacab.
All right.